An impoverished African-American youth approaches a wealthy disabled woman, offering, "I possess the ability to restore your mobility in return for your discarded meals." Her response is dismissive laughter, yet circumstances are about to shift dramatically. "Do you honestly believe I would trust some mystical nonsense from a child of the streets?" Victoria Whitmore's words sliced through the mansion's atmosphere like an icy knife, her piercing azure gaze locked on the 12-year-old standing at the servants' entrance. Daniel Thompson had just presented the most daring proposition of his brief existence. Following 3 days of observing this embittered woman confined to her wheelchair, carelessly discarding complete portions while he and his grandmother faced starvation in their dwelling across the way, he had finally mustered the bravery to approach her door. "Madam, my words were sincere," Daniel responded with composure that astonished even him. "I possess the knowledge to restore your ability to walk. I merely require the nourishment you discard daily." Victoria released a harsh cackle that reverberated throughout the marble corridor. "Pay attention, young one. I have invested $15 million consulting the world's most skilled physicians over 8 years. Do you genuinely believe a street child like yourself, who likely lacks basic literacy, can accomplish what no brain surgeon has achieved?" Victoria remained unaware that Daniel Thompson was far from ordinary. While she regarded him with complete disdain, he carefully examined every aspect of the woman who had voluntarily become a captive of her own resentment. His perceptive eyes, sharpened through years of tending to his diabetic grandmother, detected indicators that costly medical professionals had missed. "You consume pain medication daily at precisely 2 o'clock each afternoon," Daniel stated calmly, observing Victoria's expression transform from ridicule to astonishment. 3 white tablets and 1 blue capsule. Additionally, you consistently complain of coldness in your legs, regardless of the temperature. How could you possibly know such details?" Victoria whispered, her arrogance faltering momentarily. Daniel had dedicated weeks to studying her daily patterns through open windows, not from morbid fascination, but because he recognized symptoms his grandmother had displayed before the procedure that preserved her life. The distinction was that his grandmother had depended on wisdom transmitted through generations, while Victoria trusted only what wealth could purchase. "I observe what your expensive physicians refuse to acknowledge," Daniel responded, maintaining respectful composure despite her hostility. "You require not additional medication, but someone who comprehends that healing sometimes originates from unexpected sources." Victoria slammed the entrance shut, though not before Daniel glimpsed something in her eyes that transcended mere contempt. It was terror. Terror that an impoverished 12-year-old had noticed something all the specialists had overlooked. As he returned to the modest dwelling he shared with his grandmother Ruth, Daniel smiled subtly. Victoria Whitmore had just committed her initial critical error, completely undervaluing someone who had matured understanding that survival demanded observation, patience, and wisdom that wealth could never acquire. The affluent woman had no concept that this young man from the slums carried knowledge spanning 4 generations of healers. More significantly, he had just identified precisely what her genuine problem was. 3 days elapsed since Victoria had shut the door on Daniel's face, yet she couldn't dismiss her unease. How did that youth know about her medications? About the exact timing of her doses? About symptoms she had carefully concealed even from Dr. Hartwell, her private neurologist? The following morning, Victoria resolved to investigate this impudent child's identity. A single call to her personal assistant provided the information. Daniel Thompson, 12 years old, resided with his grandmother Ruth Thompson in the Riverside Gardens housing development. Father's identity unknown. Mother perished in an automobile accident when he was 5. Private school scholarship recipient, exemplary academic performance, clean criminal record. "Predictable," Victoria muttered, reviewing the report. Simply another instance of a pitiful child attempting to exploit strangers' compassion. However, something in the report troubled her. Ruth Thompson, 73 years old, former hospital worker, retired due to disability from severe diabetes. Nevertheless, medical records indicated an inexplicable recovery during the previous 2 years, something physicians classified as unexpected and clinically undocumented improvement. Victoria dismissed this information as administrative error. After all, what knowledge could an elderly black woman from a public hospital possess? Meanwhile, across the street, Daniel carefully prepared his subsequent approach. Victoria's reaction had confirmed his suspicions. She wasn't genuinely paralyzed, at least not in the manner everyone believed. "Grandmother," Daniel said, settling beside Ruth on their small porch, "I need you to explain again the indicators of pseudoparalysis." Ruth Thompson had worked 4 decades as a nursing assistant, but her true knowledge stemmed from a much older heritage. Her great-great-grandmother had served as a midwife and healer in Mississippi, knowledge passed from mother to daughter across generations. When doctors informed Ruth she had 6 months to live due to diabetic complications, this ancestral wisdom preserved her. "Intelligent boy," Ruth smiled, her experienced eyes gleaming with pride. "You recognize what I taught you, correct?" Her legs tense when she believes she's unobserved. The muscles respond to emotional triggers. Daniel nodded. During his discreet observations, he had noticed how Victoria's feet moved unconsciously during her outbursts at staff, how her legs tensed when something deeply upset her. These were nearly imperceptible signs, but to someone trained to observe what doctors ignored, they provided clear evidence. "She's imprisoned within her own mind," Daniel murmured. "Her body functions, but her thoughts have created the constraints." Precisely. Psychological trauma manifesting as physical paralysis. I've witnessed 3 similar cases at the hospital. Wealthy physicians prefer treating the body rather than the mind. Prescribing medication is simpler than healing a wounded spirit. That afternoon, Victoria received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Hartwell arrived with results from recent tests she had requested the previous week, desperately seeking any hope of improvement. "Victoria, I must be candid with you," the physician said, adjusting his expensive spectacles. "These results reveal something unusual. Neural activity exists in regions that should be completely inactive. It's as if your nervous system functions perfectly." "What does this mean?" Victoria asked, her voice strained. "Neurologically, there's no physical cause for your paralysis. I've suspected this for some time, but now I'm certain." Dr. Hartwell hesitated. "Have you considered intensive psychological therapy? Sometimes trauma can manifest physically in ways that—" "Stop!" Victoria shouted. "Are you suggesting I'm pretending? That I've spent 8 years in this chair for amusement?" "No, that's not it. Your paralysis is genuine, but the cause may be psychosomatic, with appropriate treatment." Victoria dismissed the doctor before he could complete his sentence. The truth caused more pain than any terminal diagnosis. If her paralysis was mental, she had wasted 8 years hiding behind self-imposed disability. Worse, it meant a poor 12-year-old had diagnosed in minutes what she had denied for years. That evening, Victoria found herself gazing through a bedroom window at the humble apartment where Daniel lived. Lights illuminated the space, and she could observe shadows moving behind inexpensive curtains. A family surviving on income that wouldn't cover her monthly medication costs, yet apparently possessing knowledge all her wealth couldn't purchase. Momentarily, Victoria experienced something she hadn't felt in years: humility. Immediately, she suppressed it with renewed anger. "That boy won't humiliate me," she whispered to herself. "I refuse to let some slum dweller make me appear foolish." Victoria was unaware that at that precise moment, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his grandmother, carefully planning his next move. He had recognized Victoria's type: too proud to accept assistance, too wealthy to value free wisdom, and too wounded to trust anyone. But Daniel Thompson had learned a valuable lesson from his grandmother. Sometimes healing someone requires first showing them exactly how sick they truly are. While Victoria plotted revenge against the boy who had exposed the most intimate deception, Daniel smiled quietly, knowing that genuine power always belongs to those who understand that healing never comes from expected sources, especially when it comes from the hands of those the world has taught you to despise. The following week brought radical change to the dynamic between Victoria and Daniel. The millionaire had decided she wouldn't tolerate disrespect from an arrogant child and began a silent campaign to publicly humiliate him. First, she contacted the private school where Daniel held a full scholarship. "Principal Patterson, this is Victoria Whitmore from the Whitmore Foundation. I'd like to discuss inappropriate behavior from one of your scholarship students, Daniel Thompson. He has been trespassing on private property and harassing neighborhood residents." The strategy worked. The next day, Daniel was summoned to the principal's office and warned to remain in his place and avoid bothering the school's benefactors. The threat was clear: One more misstep would cost him the scholarship representing his only path to a different future. Victoria also contacted the superintendent of Daniel's building, suggesting that disruptive elements were causing discomfort to respectable neighbors. Though he couldn't legally evict them, the superintendent began creating difficulties, complaints about non-existent noise, threats of fines for imaginary violations, surprise inspections that always found minor problems. "She's attempting to have us expelled from the neighborhood," Daniel told his grandmother Ruth as she prepared the herbal tea they shared each evening. "She wants us to vanish so she doesn't have to confront the truth about herself." Ruth Thompson observed her grandson with experienced eyes. At 73, she had survived decades of institutional racism, workplace discrimination, and attempts to silence her. She recognized the behavioral patterns of those who wielded power and privilege as weapons. "Child, that woman is frightened," Ruth said calmly. "When wealthy people fear poor people, it's because they know they're committed wrongdoing. And when they fear truth, they'll do anything to destroy whoever can reveal it." "But grandmother, what if she eliminates my scholarship? What if she has us evicted?" Ruth smiled with the wisdom of someone who had faced far more powerful adversaries. "Daniel, let me share a story. When your mother was your age, a white doctor attempted to prevent me from working at the hospital because I knew too much about treatments he didn't understand. He used all his influence to harm me. What happened? I did what our family has always done. I observed, I learned, I documented everything. When the time was right, I used his own knowledge against him. Would you like to know how?" Daniel nodded, realizing his grandmother was about to teach him something fundamental. That doctor had a very important patient, a wealthy businessman suffering from the same condition I had cured in dozens of poor people. When his expensive treatment failed and the patient was dying, guess whom they consulted? You. Exactly. When I saved that man's life using methods the arrogant doctor had dismissed, everyone knew who truly understood medicine. He lost his position, his reputation, everything. Not from revenge, but because truth always emerges. Daniel began to understand. Victoria isn't just afraid I can help her. She's afraid people will discover she rejected assistance from someone she considers inferior. "Now you're thinking like a true healer," Ruth smiled. "We don't just heal bodies, child. Sometimes we must heal the sick soul of an entire society." That night, Daniel began meticulous research on Victoria Whitmore. Using the school library's computers, he discovered details that completely transformed his understanding of the situation. Victoria hadn't been born wealthy. The daughter of poor European immigrants, she had married Harrison Whitmore III, heir to a family fortune built on slave labor in the 19th century. The accident that left her paralyzed had occurred exactly one day after she discovered her husband was planning to divorce her for a younger woman. Even more interesting, Harrison had died under suspicious circumstances just 2 years later, leaving his entire fortune to Victoria. The will had been modified just 1 week before his death when he was hospitalized after a sudden heart attack. Daniel also discovered something that explained Victoria's particular hostility toward him. The Thompson family had worked for the Whitmores for generations. His great-great-grandfather had been enslaved on the original plantation. His great-grandmother had been a maid in the mansion, and his grandmother Ruth had cared for Harrison's mother when she was dying of cancer. But the most revealing detail was in medical records Ruth had kept secret for decades. Harrison's mother had cured herself of terminal cancer using traditional treatments Ruth had administered. The family doctors never knew the truth, crediting the miraculous recovery to conventional treatments that were failing. "Grandmother," Daniel said the next morning, "Victoria isn't just physically ill. She's sick with guilt, fear, and shame. Her body is reflecting the prison she has built for her own soul." Ruth nodded proudly. "And now, my grandson, you understand what true healing she needs. It's not just about making her walk again. It's about making her face who she really is and what she's done." "Exactly. But remember, our family has never used our gifts to hurt, always to heal. Even when the person doesn't deserve it, even when she hates us." Daniel spent the rest of the week watching Victoria with new understanding. Every cruel gesture she made, every attempt to humiliate him only confirmed his diagnosis. She wasn't paralyzed by physical damage, but by guilt so deep it had manifested as actual paralysis. The plan that began forming in his mind was audacious and dangerous. It wasn't just about proving he could heal her, but forcing her to confront decades of privilege built on others' suffering, lies about her own identity, and crimes she had buried under piles of money. Victoria Whitmore thought she was fighting a poor boy who wanted her leftovers. She had no idea she was about to face 4 generations of accumulated wisdom, a lineage of healers who had survived centuries of oppression, and a young man who carried not only the knowledge to cure her, but also the evidence to destroy her completely. While Victoria planned her next public humiliation of Daniel, the boy smiled quietly, knowing that each act of cruelty from her only confirmed that he had correctly diagnosed not only her physical condition, but also the moral rut that truly held her prisoner. The cure Daniel planned would be much deeper than Victoria imagined, and much more painful as well. The final confrontation took place on a Sunday morning when Victoria least expected it. Daniel rang the front doorbell for the first time, no longer using the back door reserved for people like him. When Victoria opened the door, she found not only Daniel, but also Ruth Thompson and a third person who made her blood run cold, Dr. Patricia Williams, the neurologist who had secretly treated Harrison's mother years earlier. "Good morning, Victoria," Daniel said calmly. "I've come to keep my promise. Today is the day you're going to walk again." Victoria tried to close the door, but her arrogance betrayed her. "What kind of joke is this? I've called security." "Go ahead," Daniel smiled. "They'll want to see this too, especially when they discover who you really are." Ruth stepped forward carrying an old leather briefcase. Victoria Kowalski, daughter of Polish immigrants, born July 19, 1975, married Harrison Whitmore in 2005, 3 months after discovering he was unfaithful. Victoria's face paled. No one had known her real name for decades. "The accident that left you paralyzed happened exactly 1 day after you discovered Harrison was planning to divorce you," Daniel continued. "Very convenient, don't you think?" Dr. Williams opened a medical file. "I treated Harrison's mother when she was dying of cancer. Ruth here was the one who actually cured her, but the family never knew. I kept all the records, including the neurological tests I performed on you after the accident." "Your tests always showed normal neural activity," Dr. Williams said coldly. "But you paid me very well to keep that secret, didn't you? $5 million to confirm a non-existent paralysis." Victoria staggered, leaning against the door frame. "You can't prove anything." Daniel smiled and took a digital recorder from his pocket. "I can. You know that monitoring system you installed to watch your employees? It worked very well for recording your phone conversations too." Victoria's voice echoed from the device. "Dr. Williams, I need you to maintain the diagnosis. If Harrison finds out I can walk, I'll lose everything in the divorce. Keep confirming paralysis and I'll double your fee." "You recorded my private calls." Victoria shouted, her mask of victimhood finally slipping. "Not just the calls," Ruth said calmly. "Daniel also documented how you can walk when you think no one is watching. 43 videos over 6 months showing you walking around the house, even dancing when you believed you were completely alone." Daniel connected his phone to a portable speaker. The videos began playing. Victoria rising from her wheelchair to reach something high on a bookshelf, walking normally through the garden in early morning hours, even running on the treadmill in her private basement gym. "Stop!" Victoria yelled, but her own voice on the videos betrayed her, speaking normally to staff when she thought there were no witnesses. "There's more," Daniel said softly. "Harrison's medical records. You altered his will while he was sedated after his heart attack. The same Dr. Williams who confirmed your fake paralysis also falsified your husband's death certificate." Dr. Williams hung her head. "She blackmailed me. She said she would reveal that I had covered up the fake paralysis if I didn't confirm that Harrison died of natural causes." "Harrison was poisoned," Ruth said with the authority of someone who had seen similar symptoms for decades in a hospital. "Digital is extracted from foxglove plants. It kills slowly, simulates a heart attack, and is almost impossible to detect after a few days." Victoria collapsed in her wheelchair, realizing that her world of lies was completely crumbling. "You don't understand. He was going to leave me with nothing. I gave the best years of my life to that man." "And now," Daniel said, "the time has come for the real cure. Get up, Victoria. We know you can." "I can't." Victoria shouted. "Get up." Daniel commanded with an authority that made Victoria jump involuntarily from her chair, standing up out of pure reflex. For a moment, everyone stood silently staring at the woman who had pretended to be disabled for 8 years, now standing, trembling with rage and fear. "Congratulations," Daniel said calmly. "You're officially cured." Ruth approached with new documents. "These are the reports that will be delivered today to the police, the FBI, and the IRS. Insurance fraud, falsification of medical reports, tax evasion, and first-degree murder. We also sent everything to the Washington Post, CNN, and all social media platforms. The story of the fake millionaire paralytic who killed her husband will be national news by tomorrow," Daniel added. Victoria looked around desperately. There was nowhere to run, no way to deny what was recorded, documented, proven. Decades of privilege built on lies and blood were crumbling in minutes. "You know what's most ironic?" Daniel asked, helping his grandmother put away the documents. "You'll really be paralyzed now, in prison, without your millions, without your paid doctors, without anyone to prop up your lies." Police sirens began approaching. Someone had called the authorities, probably a neighbor curious about the commotion. "The real paralysis," Ruth said wisely, "has always been in your soul, Victoria. You paralyzed yourself morally so long ago that you forgot how to live with dignity." As police climbed the mansion stairs, Victoria looked at Daniel with a mixture of hatred and involuntary respect. "How did a 12-year-old boy manage to destroy my entire life?" Daniel smiled with the calmness of someone who had learned that justice sometimes requires patience, observation, and the courage to stand up to those who consider you inferior. "Very simple," he replied. "You completely underestimated someone who grew up knowing that survival requires intelligence, not privilege. And you forgot that sometimes the most powerful remedies come from where we least expect them." In the center of that marble hall, where arrogance disguised as victimization once reigned, a new reality was now taking shape, like a symphony that finally found harmony after years of dissonant notes, proving that true justice knows no color, social class, or limitations imposed by those who confuse money with impunity. 6 months after Victoria Whitmore's spectacular collapse, the transformation was more dramatic than any Hollywood screenwriter could have imagined. The mansion that once symbolized privilege and arrogance now housed the Ruth Thompson Community Center, funded by Victoria's assets confiscated by the FBI. Daniel, at 14, had become the youngest student in Harvard's history with a full scholarship to study medicine. But what made Ruth most proud was that her grandson had turned down dozens of million-dollar offers to give interviews, preferring to continue learning the secrets of generations of healers. Victoria, who had once discarded expensive dishes while children went hungry, now shared a 2-square-meter cell in the federal penitentiary. 25 years in prison for first-degree murder would give her plenty of time to reflect on how she had wasted a lifetime building power on lies. The trial had become a worldwide phenomenon. The millionaire fake paralytic who had fooled the medical system and murdered her husband became a symbol of how arrogance destroys those who underestimate others. But what really captured public imagination was a contrast between the wisdom of a 12-year-old boy and the ignorance of a woman who had spent $15 million looking for cures that existed next door. Dr. Patricia Williams, the neurologist blackmailed by Victoria, now worked voluntarily at the community center. "Daniel showed me that I spent 40 years looking only at machines," she confessed in a national interview. "I forgot that real medicine begins with observing the whole patient. That boy taught me more in 6 months than I learned in decades of expensive specializations." Dr. Hartwell, who had accepted payments to confirm false diagnoses, lost his medical license and now worked as a pharmacy clerk. It was perfect irony for someone who had scorned unscientific treatments while participating in a multi-million-dollar medical scam. The Riverside Gardens community had been completely transformed. Children who had once struggled just to eat now dreamed of becoming doctors, scientists, lawyers. Daniel had proven that intelligence and determination could defeat any system designed to keep them in their place. Victoria did indeed develop problems with her legs in prison. Stress and depression caused genuine muscle atrophy. Now she depended on a wheelchair borrowed from the infirmary, a cheap version that made her old $15,000 chair look like a lost throne. Daniel visited her only once. She looked at him through bulletproof glass with empty eyes, without the arrogance of before. "Why did you come here?" she asked. "To make sure you understood," Daniel replied. "I never wanted to destroy you. I just wanted you to stop trying to destroy us. You were just a child. And you were a wealthy adult with all the resources in the world. Who really should have known right from wrong?" Victoria finally understood the magnitude of her smallness. A 12-year-old boy had shown more wisdom and integrity than she had in her entire privileged life. Daniel's story became a case study in universities across the country. The Daniel Thompson effect forced institutions to recognize that exceptional intelligence comes from everywhere, especially where we least expect it. Programs were created to identify talent in communities traditionally ignored by academia. Ruth continues to run the center, now expanded to 3 floors of the former mansion. She trains a new generation of healers who combine ancestral knowledge with modern science, proving that true wisdom knows no racial or social barriers. Victoria became an example in criminology classes about how privilege without character leads to self-destruction. When prisoners ask how a rich woman ended up there, the answer is always the same. She underestimated someone she considered inferior and paid the price for her arrogance. The real lesson is not about a boy who defeated a cool woman. It's about how our society ignores wisdom when it comes from people who don't fit our preconceptions about who should be smart or worthy of respect. Daniel proved that the most powerful healing is not for the body, but for toxic beliefs that prevent us from recognizing value in every human being, regardless of color, origin, or socioeconomic status. Victoria tried to destroy Daniel, but ended up destroying herself. Daniel learned that true healing isn't just about restoring broken bodies. It's about transforming minds closed by prejudice into hearts open to recognizing greatness where it truly exists.